There are different audience personas with different needs, expecting different things, expecting to convert at different times, and if we apply a generalization to everyone who's on our website, that is incorrect. Rather that, we do need to really consider these individual audiences and tailor that process and tailor our media for that as well.
This is the Ryan Marketing Show, and you're listening to episode 58 of 100. Today on the show, I have Grant Osborne from First Digital in Auckland, and we're going to be talking all about marketing, something that's close to my heart. And I think everyone's got their own flavors or opinions of what works and what doesn't work in marketing. And to provide a bit of context for the audience here, Grant's organization specifically focuses on conversion revenue optimization. And he's going to go into what exactly conversion revenue optimization, CRO, is. First Digital does this for some of the largest brands in New Zealand, including Contact Energy, EasyBuy, Harmony, and EasyCar. And through this interview, we're going to do something a little bit different from the normal style and kind of ask each other some questions so that you as the audience can get some value on both what Grant brings to the table with some of the larger organizations he deals with, and also what I deal with some of my client base in Hawke's Bay. So I guess first, welcome, and thanks for being on the show, Grant.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Good stuff. So let's start with a very broad question, which is, marketing can be anything and everything. Where does First Digital sit in that overall landscape? What does the business do at its core?
So at its core, so we talk about, specifically our audiences are really online retailers, online finance companies, online travel agents who really want to grow. That is the number one, factor of us working with them is that they want to grow, they want to transform, they see online as the future opportunity for them to grow, and we're here to help that. The way we do that is more around data and analytics. So understanding customer data, understanding who it is exactly is the customer for the particular client, what they want to do while on the website. So what are their needs? How do we overcome any objections they have? That's the conversion side, and also understanding what media is going to drive the best result in terms of return. Sure, you can spray and pray, I guess, but for us it's about really using data to understand what is working well, and then to put a plan in place and execute that to improve results.
Now, I guess that's interesting in where we sit now, 2016, 2017, in that if you're going with a data-driven approach, you must be armed with quite a lot of insight into what campaigns are and aren't working in comparison to some of the traditional media channels. What does that mean for your client base allocating spend into the digital arena?
Yeah, and look, to be honest, it's still a challenge. One of the challenges we have around analytics and data is just having confidence in the data. So we've gone through a phase where, people didn't have data, now they've got data, perhaps they're drowning in data, but actually they don't have the confidence in that data for whatever reason to be able to then actually use that to drive things forward. So a lot of what we do is actually around education, training, understanding what the data is actually saying, and helping companies then be confident in, making some big shifts because they then have the confidence in their data. Oftentimes around the data again, we use Google Analytics as a platform. We are a Google Analytics 360 partner or reseller, and we, I guess we, as much as we use it as a platform, questions often come where, hey, this data doesn't marry up to my CRM data, which is right, or hey, I'm advertising on another publisher, perhaps one of the large publishers like Train Me or so forth, and they're saying, hey, the reports they're giving to me about the effectiveness of my campaign doesn't match up with Google Analytics, and therefore, hey, that they're not sure what is right, and then it's hard to make decisions based off that. So yeah, we're kind of in this transition phase where, look, some clients do get in and trying to move forward. Others are really just going through that transition phase of understanding actually what is real, what is important, and what is actually meaningless.
So as an example, what would be some of the data points that are meaningful to the marketing part of the organisation? Are we talking about the basics of number of unique users, page view times, bounce rates? Is it that kind of technical, or is this something at a kind of a higher level, more around the customer side of how frequently they're buying or how recently they purchased, or is it a bit of both?
Look, it is a bit of both. I guess what we try and do, or where clients tend to come externally to an agency, is around the new customer acquisition. So often email. They have their email database that will help to get their repeat. Often what we help with is their new customer acquisition, and so to do that, really, well, we try and first of all take a step back. And actually look at and say, well, look, firstly, what are client objectives? And the objective may be, to double my revenue or whatever, or provide a better customer experience. And then we say, okay, associated with that objective, what are the associated goals? And you might have specific goals like, increase conversion rate, or we need to improve our online revenue by 10%. Under that, you've got KPIs, which are really your metrics associated with those things. And even within that, you've got different segments because, hey, perhaps your Australian customers are different from your New Zealand customers, or you've noticed, hey, all things are going well on desktop, but they're not on mobile. And therefore, the way to actually grow that, or the meaningful metrics, are what is actually meaningful to deliver your end objective. And look, for most e-commerce companies, really the effectiveness of any campaign will come down to, okay, first and foremost, sessions, but you want to track that through. So you want to say, well, of those sessions, how engaged were they? And that gives an indication of the quality of the landing pages and the experience that they're getting. Are they getting the answers they want? Through to, I guess, your conversion rate to cart, through to checkout and revenue. Oftentimes the end goal is revenue, and really only got a couple of levers. To increase your revenue, you've got your number of sessions through, multiplied by your conversion rate, multiplied by your average order value, and those are the only three things that you can really do to leverage to get that end outcome.
It sounds so simple, yet I know hiding within there is hundreds, if not thousands, of little variables, down to colours of buttons, or how many scrolls, or what a product displays like on mobile. How do clients know where to focus their time? Do you guide them to what your team believes is the right way, or do you just test it and let the data then tell you what the right way was? What's the balancing act there? Good question. So we try and always start with the data. So whether that's your quantitative data through Google Analytics, and understanding your drop-offs along a conversion funnel, or the checkout process, for example. So we'd say, hey, there's a bigger dropout here than anticipated. What could be stopping? Hey, let's develop a hypothesis around that. But also we use qualitative data as well. So we use on-site surveys and on-site click maps, or we might use usertesting.com, for example, and get real insight to what people are thinking. One of the great tools we use is a tool called qualaroo.com, that allows us to do on-site surveys, but we have been blown away by
the response to those things. You would think people think they're pesky and just get rid of them, but actually a lot of people want to give their 2 cents, and if something is perhaps not quite right for them to complete what they want to do, they'll provide the feedback. Often the feedback that has come through from there has actually been more technical issues than anything. They just simply can't, the functionality doesn't allow them to do something. And so from that insight, we can then go back and check different browsers and other things. And actually sometimes, well, that's where we should start. So use data, fix technical issues before you really get any real data from that. Just going on from that too, though, and to get really good results in New Zealand, we've found, because New Zealand's a smaller country, smaller visitation, some of the big platforms don't allow us, or we struggle to achieve significance in the data. That, hey, yes, it's going to improve, but we don't get to a statistically valid audience pool to say, yeah, absolutely it does. And so what we found in New Zealand is we actually need to go for bigger or larger changes to the site, sometimes completely different feels, to actually show statistically that, yes, that has made a difference. Sometimes, just testing on a button or a background image, we just don't have the population on some sites to actually support the outcomes. And yes, people are making, I guess, erroneous outcomes based on bad data.
That's fascinating, because I know that what you've said there around filling in survey forms on Qualaroo. New Zealanders versus other countries are far more willing to give feedback. One of the previous interviewees on the show said over 2/3 of her customers provide regular feedback. So it's interesting where we've got that population that will tell us what they want or what's not working. If only the organisation can interpret that and then using it in some meaningful way to form a hypothesis. That's your customers will tell you, and I think
absolutely
that's probably a sort of a black mark against marketers, is that we're known for chasing the shiny new toy, yes, when actually a lot of marketing success comes from fixing things that are broken.
Yes.
Are there any particular things that you see time and time again with CRO, conversion revenue optimization, where it's the same things that need fixing?
More often than not, it is just around not being aware of your audience from a browser perspective or a device perspective. And so before something is launched, sure, it may look okay to you on whatever you're using, but perhaps what you're using isn't the majority of people. And so again, in Google Analytics, we can see a breakdown of that, and often you'll end up with a device or a browser or a browser version that has significantly lower conversion or whatever you're looking at, and you can spot anomalies. The other thing that is still an issue is around speed. So sometimes the speed of sites and the speed to render a page can take way too long, and people just leave. So a couple of simple things.
So make it faster.
Make it faster.
And make it work with every platform, browser, computer, mobile.
I mean, it is a challenge to do that, and we appreciate that. But again, from the data, at least you can understand. Well, okay, this isn't going to work with 1% of my population versus, hey, this isn't going to work with 15% of my population. Yeah. So
implementing CRO for an organisation, when you're talking about the last part of the funnel, yep, which is usually where you get this awesome multiplier effect, because you've already got them to want to shop,
yep,
and it's whether they can check out or not successfully.
Yep.
What are some of the kinds of results you would expect to get for a client where they've optimised that process from landing on the page or on a product
that is a it depends kind of answer. Our clients have seen different things, and there is a multiplier effect, but at the same time, there's a number of other things going on around pricing changes, product changes, and so forth. So I guess the way we try and approach it is to create a benchmark, but also use the A/B testing, where A is the original and B is the new version, to say, well, look, over this period of time with everything else that's going on, we can isolate what impact that did have. We've had experiments from 10% to 100% plus in terms of growth or result from that. And in saying that, we've had hypotheses that we've tested that have yielded the opposite result, and we've kind of lost the client money over a period of time. But again, I guess win or lose, you learn something from that. Just another thing around our testing is one mistake some people make is trying to bring anything they change back to revenue. So they make a change on the landing page and evaluate the effectiveness of that change by the revenue, once they've gone through. And we think that is incorrect. What we try and do is say, well, what is the next thing we want them to do from that landing page? That next thing may be to complete a search or complete a newsletter sign up or whatever it is. We've got to say, what is the next step that we want them to do, and then evaluate that, as well as keeping in mind an overall. But sometimes where you're testing and your overall conversion is too far apart to actually be meaningful.
I think that's fantastic, because there's two key reasons I think anyone should be tracking. It's your high buyer intent that you want to add to cart, purchase, checkout, and there's revenue. And then there's the low buyer intent to purchase now, but maybe they're just information gathering.
Yes.
So that homepage change that makes it easier for them to download a white paper, yes, capture an email address, by A/B testing and optimizing that, may ultimately get you revenue.
Yes.
But the only way to see whether you've improved it is to check the next point in that path, not whether it's directly related to revenue for that particular site.
Yeah.
And I think that's the balancing act, is knowing what the destination is of each of those journeys, whether it is a purchase or whether it is data gathering by the customer.
Yeah, so that's, absolutely agree with that, and that comes to brings up another challenge, I guess, and that's we find with our businesses, often they don't really have a good idea of who their customer audiences are, and what journeys they take. And again, we try and use data to somewhat solve that. And, sometimes that can't be completely solvable, but just to understand, yes, there are different audience personas with different needs, expecting different things, expecting to convert at different times, and if we apply a generalization to everyone who's on our website, that is incorrect. Rather, that we do need to really consider these individual audiences and tailor that process and tailor our media for that as well.
And I think that's where it starts to get really tough, Grant, is because even on the inside, looking at all these stats, you can end up going down a rabbit warren, yep, and go, wait, where did we start off on this journey? We actually, yep, need to go a few steps back and think, where do we now want to go?
Yes.
It can actually become too all-consuming.
Yes.
So the part I guess we haven't covered is how do you get finding that traffic in the first place, and the right quality traffic, yep, can be a journey in itself, because audiences have disintermediated. They're on even just messaging. There's Facebook Messenger, there's WhatsApp, there's Snapchat, yes, there's text messaging, there's emailing.
Yes.
Just within that messaging area, forget social media. I mean, there's dozens of different networks. So one of the issues is finding the right audience for your customers. I've got my own views on it. I'd be interested to hear what yours are.
I'd be interested to hear yours too.
We can swap. You first.
So the question is, how do we find the right media mix?
Yeah, like if your client's got, so look, here's my budget, how do you deploy that
Okay.
in a way where it's going to get you the right volume of audience and then
Yes.
the right quality audience?
Yes. All right. So for us, where we typically start is again in the data. We can look at the analytics, understanding where that traffic's coming from at the moment, and what the engagement rates and what the conversion rates are per channel. And so from a historical perspective, we can gain some insight and say, well, look, it could look like this moving forward.
Based on where they've come from
But-
a year earlier?
Yeah, based on historical, marketing allocation. Yeah,
Okay.
as long as it's tracked. Generally speaking, though, for us, there are layers, and the first layer, I guess, is very core. Who is your core market? What are they doing? And at the very bottom of the funnel, how can we make sure they get there? In most cases, for most client websites, that starts with search. So in the end, hey, they've gone through their inspiration phase or whatever. They've narrowed it down to a few companies. They're wanting to find more information. They're in the mode to purchase, and they find themselves on a search engine. So for us, for most clients, that media mix starts with search, and starting with the core things that are highly relevant to their business. Yes, we might expand it a little bit from there, but we believe that search should be always on for every client, whether that be paid or organic or a mixture of both. You should always be on. Then in addition to that, also a believer that remarketing should be always on as well. So as people are coming into the site, we should be dropping people into buckets like, hey, all visitors, people who made it to the checkout, people who went through the process but didn't complete it. We have all these different audience lists, and again, that should be core and should be always on. It really should be always on, because there's always those customers who are looking for you, and you always need to provide that signpost so they can find you, because they're looking for you. Outside of that, I guess we've got to say, well, what is the next best thing? Sometimes, and again, especially in New Zealand, because we're a small market, there is a ceiling on search. There is actually only so much we can spend on our core keywords before they're exhausted. And then it's like, well, what next? And for us, that's where, well, we can do a bit of testing. So instead of, again, having a big campaign and investing all your budget into, like one platform or one publisher or one channel, you can dynamically allocate your budget to what's working best for you. You can, throw a few grand at one, or a couple of $100 here. You can test the results, and if it's working, you do more of it. In addition to that, what we've found in particular with Facebook, and to a certain extent Google, is again the audience targeting on those is getting more specific and more relevant and better and better and better. And so we're in search. You identify people by keyword, and you say, hey, yes, that's relevant to my business. I want to bid on those keywords, or I want to be seen there. In Facebook, for example, you can slice and dice your audience by age, demographic, interests, all those kind of things. And in some ways, you can possibly get a nice, smart audience, because you only ever have a certain percentage of your audience who are looking for you right now, and you want to reach that audience who perhaps aren't looking for you, but could perhaps be in the market. And so we can do that. And then in addition to that, I guess often a next step is say, well, once we have that right audience, how do we create lookalike audience or similar audiences to, again, find those people we know we're going to convert, but they don't know us yet, we don't know them yet, but hey, they look similar to our existing core customers. And so we can build it that way. And as with everything, we want to test and measure and track and do more of what works and less of what doesn't. So that was a bit of a long answer, but that's generally how we pull it through.
The pecking order there is Google first, search first, then on to remarketing.
Yes.
And then, because those are your high buyer intent, people are going to Google with a problem to solve, and then you would put social third.
Yep.
Okay.
Particularly because of their ability to target certain audience segments. They know a lot about people.
And see, that makes sense, because when people are searching on Google and they have a problem to solve, if you can solve that problem, you're likely to get a direct sale out of it. It's a very clear buying journey.
Yep.
I think what I'd add to that is where someone doesn't know that they have the problem, so it's impossible for them to search for it.
Yep.
But when you show them the problem that they have on social, it creates bias for them to then activate them in search.
Yeah.
And I think one of the useful things for clients is, as you said, those layers.
Yeah.
Using one to reinforce the other,
Yeah.
and doing those campaigns on social that then help spur the search on Google, and then making sure you're seen there. And I think what's interesting with where Google's going, and I think they have to go this way, is a lot of their real estate has shrunk, because it's now 60+% search on the phone rather than desktop.
Yep.
So when that's migrating away, there's all this opportunity to take your competitors' slice, because not a lot of businesses in New Zealand, at least at the scale I'm dealing with, even advertise against their brand name.
Yes.
So if someone searches their brand name, there is no paid search result.
So especially in mobile, that paid search result real estate is so incredibly important. Own the brand, own the keywords that are most core to you. Because again, that real estate, that's really all you see first on mobile. Whereas on your desktop or your laptop, yes, you take in the whole screen, and yes, you've got your paid ads, and yes, you've got your main set, and it's just part of the screen. On mobile, that top ad is gold.
And I think what's interesting about what you said before is that New Zealand's a small market, and you only have so many keywords to bid on before you've exhausted your budget. My clients are at the other side of it, which is my job is to help them avoid competing with the clients you have, because they just get blown out of the water on spend.
Yes.
So I always recommend they go for longer keyword, longer tail search phrases that have a lower cost, because you're not going directly against your competitors, and to actually build content around those longer tail keywords, so you don't have to pay necessarily, so you've got an organic result.
I think, I agree with that. I think with our clients, what we're trying to do is, again, understand the objective. So, for example, if the objective is, people don't know about us, they don't know about our product as something new, your I guess the method to attract those changes, and yes, it may be less about search and more about social, so completely agree with that. In addition, I guess with what you want to do with your media is, again, understand the results, because if you are going on the long tail and you're getting results, as in you've defined success and it is cost effective for you, then why wouldn't you do more of it? If you know your return is X times the profit you make from that. Your return, meaning your profit, is X times the cost. Then shouldn't you continue to increase that, because then you'll continue to increase your results and your profits, and you can invest more into it. So one of the things we try and discuss with our clients, even though they're larger, is instead of having a fixed monthly budget, it is a budget that as long as we're achieving a return on ad spend within an acceptable realm, that we can continue, because we know that the business is continuing to make money.
And that requires a level of trust, but I think it's not unusual either. Like, businesses know that they spend more in December on marketing than on January. And it also makes sense if you can show them the data that you're getting 6x return here or 7x, why not double down?
Yep.
Like it's more like poker in a way, right? Like when you're on a winning streak, but you get to see all the cards. Why would you not keep doing it?
Or if you've got salespeople, why would you tell them not to come into work today just because you've filled up your quota?
Exactly. Yeah. Like if they're on a winning streak, keep it going. So I guess this moves us more into the future conversation into 2017, 2018. Interested in your views on where you think marketing is going to head, and then I'm happy to share where my thoughts as well, and kind of contrast them and compare them for the audience.
Okay.
Or do you want me to go first?
You can go first. You can go first, and I'll respond.
So I think there's two major drivers in the medium term, which is the next 2 years. So I'm going to not talk about bots. I'm not talking about AI, and I'm not talking about VR. I think those are all amazing technologies, but they're way before the beginning. So my types of clients, would see them the same way they see Snapchat, as it's fun and interesting, but not useful. I think from the New Zealand population, we are addicted to our phones.
Yes.
Almost overly so. And that's going to continue to drive what businesses should be doing. How do you get into someone's phone? How do you get into a notification on their phone? So you're working back from that. There's lots of apps that gives notifications. So how do you gamify your campaign to turn on a notification for any of your posts on Instagram? Because that then creates bias. You're getting them closer to being in your part of the digital ecosystem. I think that's going to be interesting. I think from how people use mobile, there's going to be a move away from social media.
Why do you say that?
There's not going to be a wholesale shift, but there's going to be a move to social private media, more messaging. So you're seeing, particularly with Facebook, the growth in Messenger to offset Snapchat. I think the next space for clients to look into is when the Messenger app starts having ads being able to be served into it. So as an advertiser, Facebook knows who I need to target based on what's on their profile, their age, their demographic, their interests, their likes. I think where it's going to move is Facebook will be able to tell me what people talk about in their private Messenger app and use that as a confidence level to then serve up ads. And I think that's going to be a useful place.
Interesting.
So that's probably 2 years out. I think for the next 12 months, use what you know and that your competitors don't know and that your customers don't necessarily know. And that unique identifier is the email address, but to use it in a way where it's not how you normally use an email address, which is to send email marketing. Use it as a way of targeting, and not targeting necessarily for acquisition, but targeting for retention and loyalty. If you can stop the leaky bucket, you don't need as many new customers to acquire. So that then brings up really interesting issues that I don't think have been dealt with in the marketing space yet, of when you should and shouldn't use an email address. If someone has unsubscribed, you're not going to be emailing them anymore, and that's a fact. But does that mean that you shouldn't use that email address to remarket to them as a win-back opportunity indirectly through Facebook? Yes. Or does that mean that you shouldn't use them to find someone like them on Facebook? So I think we're in this interesting time where data can be very powerful and can be used in some very interesting ways by getting the best of lots of different platforms and then testing to see if you can find a gold seam across them that then you can scale. So, in many ways it's more of the same, but it's, basic advice over, the next Christmas, New Year period when CEOs and business owners are away. Look at some of your competitor sites on your mobile phone. Look at your own site. Give it to an 8-year-old niece. Get them to work their way through it. How easy was it for them to do that? And I guess one last thing. I know this is your interview, not mine. But
That's all right.
The one area that I'm finding huge cut through is around video plus Facebook. Facebook wants to become a TV channel, basically. So they're over rewarding advertisers who put TV into the mix. Not TV ads as in traditional media, but video stories. I think there's a really powerful space for organizations to think in terms of Netflix marketing. A little episode at a time, where everyone who watched episode 1 then gets 2, then gets 3, then you might ask for an email. All the long way this buying journey, you're actually creating a new shopping cart process before they go to the site. So I think there's some exciting tools, but as you've said through this interview, I think it's about measuring it. So because if you can't measure it, you don't know what's working and what's not.
Yes.
So that's my sort of insight into 17 and 18.
That's
your turn.
That's interesting. Okay, so firstly on mobile, completely agree that mobile has come and will continue to be the primary device by user. We see that through the data, and the amount again of companies who view their website as people on desktops are looking at my website and not realizing the proportion of mobile users. That's got to change. Mobile users are prevalent and they're only going to increase. The interesting thing again is, even with some of these companies, they still treat the user as having the same intent, albeit a different device. And I think what needs to change is actually say, well, no, someone on a mobile device has actually different needs than someone on a desktop device. So, I think, that needs to change a little bit. I do think, data is going to be continue to be increasingly important. There is a need for retailers and for other online businesses to continue to understand their data, but like you said, also there gets to be this data overload, and you can spend all your time in the data, and so what needs to happen is, I guess, simplification of the data. So we talk about big data, but to me, I think simple data is in some ways more powerful than big data. And that is only going to come, again, if you understand your objectives, your goals, bringing it back to exactly what you're trying to achieve. Otherwise, you just drown in the data. My probably 2 to 3 year vision is I probably disagree with you about bots and AI.
Nice. I was hoping we were going to get some discussion.
I think it will happen faster than we think, and faster than, especially in the marketing space, faster than we are prepared for. So I think we are using bots and AI and thinking about it in business terms. I think there is going to be a consumer change, and in much the same way as the iPhone changed consumer behavior, and it changed everything. I think in the same way over the next few years we're going to see an AI bot change that changes consumer behavior, that then in turn pushes all the businesses to basically catch up with that. But on a business side, we're seeing that already. So with our AdWords campaign optimizations, for example, we can run scripts to basically do everything a person can do, and there's a lot of platforms that try to, I guess, piece your data together and run scripts and intelligence on top of those to tell you what they're doing. There's reporting tools that will take your Google Analytics data or any other data you have in a spreadsheet and spit out a written report as to what's changed and where the differences are and everything like that. And so we're seeing this creep in, but I actually think the investment will come because consumers change their behaviour, and we as an industry just have to adapt quickly.
Right, so it's not going to be businesses adopting, it's going to be businesses responding to the consumer demand.
Yeah, look, I may be completely wrong, but I think that has to happen in a few years. I also think, so one of the reasons for that, and we may be going a bit of a tangent, but that's all right. One of the reasons for that is I think as consumers, we have lots of different companies who have lots of different parts of our data, but they all exist in those companies in silos. Whereas if we take a step back and say, well, actually, what is the best experience for me as a consumer? For me as a consumer is to have all those data silos connected. So for example, yes, I'm wearing a Fitbit, and yes, I've got my Fitbit data, but actually, what can that Fitbit data mean to me? Hey, if I'm not achieving my results, yes, it can kick me off the couch, but perhaps it could then lead into an eating plan, for example, and automatically buy some food that it knows that is more tailored to my plan, albeit I exercise less or exercise more, or what my goals might be. So there's a breakdown of silos. I also think over the next couple of years, the consumer change that's already underway, that is emerging, less so in New Zealand, is around intelligent assistants. And I think the always-on, always-listening intelligent assistants in homes, again, I think have come of age, and from a consumer experience, is much easier for me to deal with an intelligent assistant. What happens to marketing then is you've got machines talking to machines, and it would be interesting if that was to happen in a rapid pace, because what we now call as marketing and all our investment into making things pretty actually goes away, where basically we have algorithms talking to things, and we get things at the end. And so our time is not invested shopping, our time is not in the consumer experience. The consumer experience isn't the process to purchase. The consumer experience then becomes, okay, once we've received that, what are we doing with that? But again, that's only going to work as if we break down the silos between all the data sets that exist sort of elsewhere in company land, and we have access to that data, that we can control that data, and we can pull that data together. And intelligent assistants are only going to be intelligent to the point that they have all that data. So I see a shift going from companies owning data to people and personally owning data.
So this has just happened over in America, where because Amazon's got a lot of data, for example, on book purchasing. They know who's going to purchase what type of book, kind of in advance of them even thinking they want to buy it. But they know the rest of their business model is retail, going into a store, because they don't have retail stores, which they've now opened up.
Yes.
And they're created them almost like warehouses, factories, booked to the front, just like you'd see on the Amazon store online, except there's no prices. You have to scan to get a price. There's very few staff in there. It's almost like a supermarket all the way to the roof, and with books. And this particular reviewer said, look, it was all there and it was all efficient, and it could have been delivered to my house, or I could go down there. It just left me wanting more, and I still wanted to go back to my independent bookshop that had the couch in the corner, and it had coffee brewing, and didn't have all the books that were 4-star plus.
Yes.
But it had some oddballs that maybe I would have reached for because I liked the cover on it.
Yes.
So I guess, listening to this, we've got two data-driven marketers. If there was a branding person out here, they're saying these guys are crazy. This is never going to all the way play out.
Yes. And I think what, perhaps, what might happen is, there being a difference between, the day-to-day and the experiences. Because now we've kind of merged them into one and saying, well, shopping is the experience. But perhaps we're taking, the shopping element away, but we're still wanting experiences. Whether those experiences be, with a shop, whether those experiences be with friends and family or whatever, we're going to choose those experiences. We're going to value those experiences more than the experience of shopping itself.
Right.
That may take some time, but yeah, the example you just gave with the bookshop, yeah, absolutely, and we can still value that. We can still seek that out, but that's an experience because we're valuing that experience, or the solitude, or the escapism, or whatever it is, away from the day to day. But yeah, there's still all this automation that happens with the rest of our lives, with things which we shouldn't have to think about, or we don't want to think about. We want to choose where we spend our time.
Okay. So Grant, your future prediction is that although the shopping cart may commoditize in terms of experience and then automate, and there's algorithms talking to algorithms, that there still needs to be a brand experience that's considered for a consumer to want to deal with that brand. Or are you saying there's not even a brand experience?
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different approach and say there's a customer, a person experience they want to have. Whether or not they invite the brands into that experience is possibly to still be seen. That at the moment, yes, we have brands designing these experiences, that we enjoy brands like Coke or Air New Zealand or whatever, because they are giving these experiences, but it is, again, a company-led experience that we are saying, hey, these experiences don't exist elsewhere, we really value these. But what would happen if us as people actually chose our experiences and then kind of, the companies join into those, but it's, we live our lives independent of companies. We've got family and friends and other things. The whole social element, but yeah, that side of things have been pushed by companies.
That could be quite scary for some businesses. That they may have people that just turn off their access to their data and to their time.
Correct. So that's what I'm saying. It could be very interesting, and I think as I guess marketers, as strategists and companies, we need to I guess be prepared for multiple different scenarios in the future. So yes, we need the here and now, and yes, we need to focus more on mobile, and yes, we need to look at the data, and yes, we need to provide a good experience and be creative. But we also, I guess, and this comes back to also people, believing their jobs will be made redundant. One of the I guess biggest factors is around adaptability. So yes, we're expecting people, employees, staff to be adaptable and change to different technologies. And I think, as companies, you can't expect to be immune from that same thing as well. And just from a company culture, absolutely, you need to be adaptable, you need to change. You may make some wrong decisions and, go in different directions, to have them stopped. But I think, that willingness, or the capacity to be adaptable is going to be the most significant thing, whether you win or you lose in that.
Absolutely agree. Being agile and fluid. This has been a really interesting interview, Grant, and certainly slightly different because we're both from marketing backgrounds.
Yes.
Before I finish up, one sort of last question is, with your first digital hat off,
yes.
What brands do you think are doing a great job at the moment in New Zealand? Who's doing marketing really well that you go, wow, that's best practice?
Putting me on the spot here. Look, come to mind are the big ones, like in New Zealand and so forth. And again, because they are relevant and interesting, and the videos are great. It's providing a good experience that is often a bit humorous. But I'd say for me personally, efficiency is perhaps more important. And to me, again, my own opinion, but in the future, your product is your marketing, and so. But again, if we apply that to New Zealand, the self-check-in kiosks and all those other things, give me a good experience. Therefore, I am going to be with them independent of their marketing, and I think we'll continue to see more of that. So I think again, I appreciate companies who leverage data in different ways to provide that better product or better service not just the marketing layer over top. You already mentioned about Amazon. Just interesting what they are doing, leveraging their data to personalize the actual experience. We don't see them, well, at least in New Zealand, doing a whole lot of marketing, but yet we still purchase on Amazon because it's a good experience and because oftentimes it gets delivered to us faster, cheaper than if we had dealt with someone locally. To me, those people who are doing it well, yes, there's a brand and marketing element to it, but really their product or service is doing the talking for them.
And that's an interesting point, is that marketing isn't just going to acquire people that don't know about you yet. It can just be the great experience and then the referrals that come from that.
Absolutely.
I think my favourite at the moment's got to be Netflix, where what I see on my Netflix screen versus what you would see is fully customised.
Yep.
And it's broken down into recently viewed, popular, what's been released right now. There's the genre, search works really well. Yeah. And it's not taxing on the brain to decide. It's kind of like you can just browse into various different things, and I think that type of interface applied to a business could be really exciting.
Yes, and again, it's using data to personalise your experience. It's not treating everyone as this big homogenous group. It is saying, well, actually, everyone does have these individual preferences or things they want to do. Hey, let's use the data we have to provide them with a great experience.
Well, we could talk for hours and hours, Grant, on marketing, but our time has come to an end. So thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to seeing more articles on marketing from you next year. If you're not following Grant, he is doing some articles not only on LinkedIn but on the firstdigital.co.nz site, where you get a little bit more insight into what conversion revenue optimization is all about, and where his head is at with some of the customer case studies, and where marketing's going in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Done. If you like this episode, remember to subscribe for free on iTunes. Simply search for The Ryan Marketing Show in the iTunes Store.